Go.
Sara, welcome to your own platform.
Thanks, Ian.
No worries. You've been so gracious in pulling together a whole load of people, which you said you find interesting. We find you fascinating. And so we thought, actually, let's turn the tables on you. You've been good enough to interview all of us. Shouldn't we interview the real expert in the room, which is you?
I'm not sure about that. Maybe in some areas.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do to start off with. I would like you just to tell us a little bit about you, what you do, and then I believe you're going to talk to us about a passion of yours, which is human needs, and in particular, the 6 human needs.
Yes. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know me, and I think most people who are watching this do, but if they've passed it on, they won't. I'm an NLP trainer and a coach. I've spoken at several conferences as well, so now I'm a speaker. And I'm just extremely passionate about helping people really to understand themselves and to become empowered as a result of that knowledge, so that they can find out where in their lives can they make a change, and even if it's a small change to themselves and the way they think, that can actually make a really massive change to their own results and to the people around them. The 6 human needs is something that was developed by a woman called Chloe Madanes. And she heavily influenced the work actually of Tony Robbins. So anybody who's into Tony Robbins and follows him, and you know, and obviously he's NLP based as well. And when I came across the 6 human needs, it just blew me away, because it's a framework that gives a really quick and easy way of identifying which of the human needs any of our behaviors are attempting to meet. So we all have these 6 needs. There's nobody who doesn't have these 6 needs. And a little bit like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, in the sense that they come in a particular order, however, quite different from that, which is very fixed as a triangle with the bottom one supporting the one above, etc. These actually can be organized in any way depending on the person. So we all have our own priority. So that alone was really, really interesting. And whatever your top 2 needs are, they will pretty much determine actually most of your behavior in any context. So those needs will be driving everything really that we're doing. So a little bit like the criterion values work that I know that you do. It's kind of similar to that, but there's only 6, so it's a little, and we have them. It's not that, and obviously they'll change depending on where we are in life, so they're flexible. It's not, but again, we're not putting people in boxes, and we're not putting labels on people, we're not fixing them, and nothing is fixed, thank God. Otherwise we'd all be a bit stuck. So that blew me away, was actually the order of these will make a big difference to the individual and what they do. And then the second thing that was really an eye-opener for me was that every need can be satisfied both positively or negatively. And because it's deeply unconscious, we don't realize often why we're doing something. And even though it might be in a negative way, and we keep repeating a negative pattern, if we understand which need it is to satisfy, we get that understanding, that awareness, we can then see that actually if we look at satisfying it in a more positive way, that's more sustainable. So we can meet our need in an attainable way negatively, but it's not sustainable. We have to keep going round and round and round in circles, repeating the same negative pattern. But if we find a more sustainable, positive way of meeting that need, actually we release ourselves from those negative patterns. And sometimes it's just through awareness that it disappears.
Okay.
Which is pretty remarkable, because often a lot of work involves, you know, work that we have to kind of really dig in, and we have to, now sometimes it's not, sometimes we do have to go back and maybe look at limiting decisions that we have, or emotional baggage that we're carrying, or, you know, any beliefs that we have that maybe are driving us. But really to just start to identify how are we meeting those needs and what the order of them is. For me, in really the space of about an hour and a half of just watching a video and doing a little online test, I immediately started to change a certain pattern of behavior. It literally disappeared almost instantaneously. So I love anything that's really easy and simple and doesn't involve too much hard work, to be honest. So I'm always looking for shortcuts.
Great. Can you give us an overview of those 6 needs?
Yeah.
Just the feel of them.
Absolutely. And I think particularly at this time, the first 4 will be the ones that people are struggling with the most, and it's the last two that people, if they focus on those, will really help them. So they're generally the order that they come in at. So the first one is a need for certainty. So if you think about any of you who've had children or have children, you know, we're always told routine for babies and for little kids. This predictability, this awareness that if they cry, they're going to be, you know, if they're hungry, they're going to be fed. If they're, you know, wet, then they're going to be changed. If they're lonely, they're going to be, you know, comforted. That there's a predictability in terms of cause and effect, and that they know for certain that there's somebody there. Now, of course, not everybody, you know, is lucky enough necessarily to have grown up with that, but that's what children need, and that is our very first need that we come into the world, is to have certainty and predictability. And to have some understanding of actually how we can control things, what we can control. Okay. Now, of course, I said we can satisfy these both positively and negatively. So obviously, from a positive point of view, certainty is only about bringing the locus of control to within ourselves. What are we actually in control of, and being able to let everything else go. And that's so powerful at the moment because there's so much that is actually out of our control. And obviously, so imagine, Ian, that you were able to predict every single thing that was ever going to happen to you for the rest of your life. What would that be like? With absolute certainty, totally predictable, nothing was ever going to change. What would your life be like?
Very scary, I think. But I want to say too predictable, and I'm not keen on that because it's
boring,
too
isn't
it? Processy for me almost.
But it would be very boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You knew exactly what was going to happen today, tomorrow, next week, next month. If we had absolute predictability and certainty, we would actually be very bored.
Yes.
And again, anyone who's got children, when they get to sort of age, you know, when they're starting to move on their own and crawling and walking, they want to explore their world beyond what, you know, what they've been experiencing so far. So we are always looking for new, exciting experiences. And that brings in the next need, which is uncertainty.
Okay.
So isn't that interesting that actually we do have an inbuilt need that needs to be satisfied, which is about variety, uncertainty, to not know everything that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, I can buy into that.
Yeah, so it's almost like a continuum, really, where on one end we've got certainty, the other end we've got uncertainty and variety. And what they found is that the more uncertainty a person can handle, the better quality of life that person will have.
I'm curious now in that certainty and uncertainty of careers and jobs, you know, and almost the entrepreneurial spirit.
Big uncertainty,
yeah.
Being able to handle a huge amount of unpredictability, you know, not really knowing exactly, you know, being able to take a chance, take a risk, and actually just try something. Be okay to be wrong, be okay to not know, be in that not knowing state. And I would imagine that a lot of people who need more certainty than uncertainty, that at this time of massive uncertainty, this is going to cause them quite a lot of anxiety and stress, because what they're trying to do is trying to predict or control something that is beyond their power. And so we're expending a lot of energy and a lot of our resources on something that actually isn't going to work. So being able to just come back to the present moment, take a breath, get grounded, actually just become really certain. I'm alive, I'm breathing. You know, if you're watching this, you probably have a roof over your head and you've got food in the fridge. You won't be watching this otherwise. This would be completely irrelevant to you. But people who are sitting and looking for how can they make the best of the situation, to really start to go, what am I certain of? And it probably isn't very much, actually. There's not an awful lot in life that we can be 100% certain about, but we do know we are in control of our emotional responses. We are in control, actually, of our mind if we have the right tools. And that's really important to be able to bring that back. And, you know, uncertainty, if in your house you've got someone who is quite happy with uncertainty and just seems to be taking this in their stride, for anyone else in the house for whom certainty is more important, this is going to be like, why are you not more worried? Why are you not more concerned and stressed? Like, well, because there's a little meme I saw, and I always share it whenever I see it, which is relax, nothing is under control.
Yeah. I wonder if this explains the strange phenomena of buying in excess. It's the only certain thing that feel people comfortable because in this time of uncertainty, I can do this.
At least I have toilet rolls.
Yes. And
I was
that's a
actually
sort
going
of,
to see if I could get an image to go behind me of like walls of toilet roll. I thought that would be quite funny to do today, but I couldn't find one. So maybe next time I do one. Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, for me to go shopping for a week, you know, to plan the meals and go, I find that really quite difficult, because I'm very, very comfortable with uncertainty. It's not, my need for certainty is actually my lowest need. You know, which is why and then probably would be the same for you, Ian, because your job is not certain in terms of who you're going to be dealing with, what their problems are, you know, what the challenges are that you're going to face, you know, that you're flexible and able to move, and that's being able to deal with uncertainty, you know, be comfortable with it.
so I love the synergy between what you're describing and the 6 human needs and those 2 with what I do in your hands uncertainty. Yeah. So we can start to see that actually that where that reflects in people's lives. Set process certainty. Well, you know, we'll go with the flow.
It could be that. We don't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what's the second?
So I just want to well, before we go to that, so the second need for uncertainty, the way that can be satisfied positively is by actually putting ourselves into situations and being okay to make mistakes and to just try things, because it will generate uncertainty. We don't know. So we do get that, and going really beyond our comfort zone. However, to satisfy the uncertainty need in a negative way, one of the top ways is to create a lot of drama.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So if you have a lot of drama in your life, if you have a lot of rows and a lot of arguments, and the adrenaline's going, and you're pumped up and everything else, you know, it can satisfy that need because it is quite exciting, but at the same time it's exhausting, and you can't maintain that. You can't, you know, you're not in flow, you're actually in you know, conflict.
And that's an interesting comment there, because I'm sure there must be some neuroscience related to that element of the, you know, fight or flight or chemical.
Absolutely, because the amygdala, which you know me, I do an awful lot of work about learning in the brain and everything else. So the amygdala is our safety system, and when we've looked for something that we think is dangerous, we're sorting always for danger. The amygdala actually gets triggered, and then it triggers off a whole series of responses in the body. And sometimes what people need to trigger the amygdala is a lot of stimulus. Some people are very shut down and a little bit kind of not really connected with their emotions, so they're a bit numb. And so in order to actually feel something, they need like the dial to be turned up a little bit, you know, or a lot more than other people. So that triggers that and satisfying the need. And they know, afterwards they're thinking, why did I have that row? What that was, you know, it's so unconscious. It's such an unconscious drive. They have no idea why. And then of course it happens again. They go, I feel like I'm in, you know, Groundhog Day, same argument, different day, same response. And if you understand, this is my need for uncertainty and variety and a bit of excitement, go, okay, how else can I actually satisfy this? So I'm not destroying relationships and families, you know, the family around me. That'd be quite good. So those 2 are kind of, you know, related to each other in terms of, again, it's a continuum. We're not one or the other, and different contexts you'll need different amounts when nothing's fixed. So it's really interesting to think about the context that you're answering.
I love your hands. Nothing's fixed, a continuum, and that's a Trumpism, I think.
Hey, beautiful. It's beautiful. It could be anything. It could be.
He does that, doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. It's certain.
But you're okay. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Not at all. So then the third need, and so the three and 4 are then related to each other. So the third need is for significance. So I know anyone's watching this video before Ian's, go back and watch Ian's interview beforehand, little chat, because you talk about people being unique and people being different. And that's our need for significance is satisfied by knowing, how are we different from other people? What makes us stand out from the crowd? What makes us special in some way, shape or form? And so that's all about differences. And then the other end of that, which is the fourth need, is love and connection. And love and connection is about how are we the same as other people? You know, so we know in NLP, when we build rapport, it's always about, you know, minimizing our differences and maximizing our similarities. And by doing that, you know, we find that connection, we find that way of then talking to people and being able to communicate more effectively. So significance is how are we different, how are we unique, how do we stand out? And again, we can satisfy them positively and negatively. So a positive way is to find out, what are you good at? And it doesn't have to be in everything in life. It can be one thing. You could be particularly good at, you know, you've discovered you've got a natural knack for being really creative in the kitchen, you know, at this point, because you can't go shopping every single day. You know, you're able to feed the family and keep, you know, whatever it is. It could be entertaining people. It could be, you know, helping to fix certain problems. It really doesn't matter. Whatever you're good, if you can find something that you're good at, and I do a lot of work with teams as well in terms of choosing career paths, not in terms of telling them what to do, but helping them find what are they good at and what could they be passionate about. And I would say, if you find something you're good at and you enjoy, go for it. You know, because then you put all that energy into something you're really good at, you're going to go this far. You put the same amount of energy and effort into something you're not so good at, you're only going to go that far. You know, you're not going to be able to take that, because your passion, your motivation will be very different. So significance is about finding your passion, your purpose in life, and that will really help. Doesn't have to be, as I said, everywhere, every context, just one thing. If you know that that's where you stand out, you can satisfy that need quite well. The negative way of satisfying significance is through anger. So we are never more certain about ourselves and that we're right as when we're angry.
Okay, yeah.
So when we're angry, we're absolutely, you know, we're going head to head. We're going to try and convince everybody that we're right. And if you take this to the extreme in terms of anger, we get into aggression and violence. And you think of, you know, young teens who don't have jobs, who don't have an education, you know, how have they found their passion and their purpose in life? Are very disenfranchised, etc., etc. You know, how can they feel more significant? And by being quite violent and aggressive, you become the most significant person in the room. And that's really interesting to understand, because it means we can stop judging it from they're a bad person or a good person, to go, okay, their significance is not being met. And they don't know how, they don't realize unconsciously that this is actually how they're meeting it. And it's the same in households as well. If you feel disrespected, if you feel that you are not significant, that you're not, you know, seen, you're not held in any kind of high regard by other people in the house, you're going to get angry. Because anger gets people's attention. You become, when you're screaming at your kids, you become the most significant person to that child.
Yeah, you're up here now.
Yeah, you know, absolutely. And the problem with that is, yes, in that moment you are, but again, it's not sustainable. You know, and it becomes a very negative pattern a lot of people get into. So it's really interesting to look at, if people are feeling very angry and, you know, trying to control themselves, just ask yourself, where do you feel that you're not significant? Where do you feel insignificant somewhere in your life? And is it right to try to get that significance from those people? And the answer will be no, certainly not from your children. Your children, you're insignificant. You're just, you know, you're there to pay the bills, to buy stuff, to cook, to clean, you know, that's their job, you know. So it's about really identifying where else in your life can you actually start to really recognize. I had a client recently who said a great thing to me. He said when he stopped focusing on himself and started to look at the people around him, his question was, who's my tribe? And how can I serve them? And he realized that that's where he was going to find his significance. So that's what we were working on, was to help him to find his own significance. You can't give it to somebody. You have to identify it yourself and bring it in. And then on the other end, the love and connection, again, is how we're the same as people. Positively, obviously, this is an amazing opportunity to really genuinely connect with our children, with our partners, with our families, even if we're not physically in the same place, but to connect through technology and seeing people, and to build those relationships. And love is an interesting one, because love is not something we have, love is something we do. You know, it's an action. It's not a noun. You don't have, you know, well, I love somebody. Well, where is it? It's like, well, if you have to behave in a loving manner to communicate that. And that's something a lot of people go, well, I love you, but I'm still going to shout at you or whatever. But like, well, that's not very loving behavior. You know, that's more about significance. So it's really, you know, recognizing where on that spectrum are you with, you know, with the people around you. So if someone has more interest in being significant than over love and connection, you can see where that will cause an awful lot of trouble with relationships. And another negative way of love and connection, of satisfying that, is actually to become quite withdrawn and quite kind of, you know, inward looking, and that draws people to, are you okay? Are you all right? You know, you kind of drawing, but that's, you know, and after a while people go, do you know what, it's exhausting to do that, because it's like a bottomless pit. So it's really, for me, love and connection starts with the self.
Okay.
You know, if you said it before about connecting in with yourself as well, before, you know, to build a relationship with yourself. So
a quick question around these, just on those four to start off with. That do they? You don't run these patterns individually. Do they overlap, and you get a different then perspective or style?
Yeah, they don't really come out with necessarily an overall style of people at the end of this. This is not like Myers-Briggs or anything like that, where you kind of have a label at the end of it. No, they're all simultaneous. I don't even know if they're overlapping, but they're definitely they're simultaneously running. It's what's the hierarchy though?
Okay, so
that's much more important.
If you could tell us the last two, and then can you give us an example for us, the audience, how you use this in your practice in empowering people?
Absolutely. So the first four needs are essentially what's called the needs of the personality. So those four needs, everybody absolutely has those. And if you have developed a way of satisfying those needs negatively without realizing that's what you're doing, it's unconscious, they become addictive behaviors, and we end up with what's called a crazy 8. So it's actually an infinity sign. It's not really an 8, but it's an 8 on its side. So the crazy 8 is we go to certainty and significance, which means you're kind of quite high energy, anger and everything else. And that's exhausting. And then we go into uncertainty and love and connection, and we kind of withdraw and we're not so sure about things. And that's exhausting. And then we go back, and anger is a very good emotion to get us out of that. So if somebody's running a crazy 8, I can help them by, number one, identifying that's what's happening. So awareness is key. Got to become self-aware. Without that, we just think we're right and we're not willing to change. And often what I will help people with doing is actually letting go of emotional baggage that is feeding that crazy 8. So once you let go of the meaning of past events, so the emotion is sustained inside of us, we're kind of holding on to it, and we can change it and take our power back from those events rather than have them control us through our emotions. Quite often the crazy 8 actually just disappears. Because there's no fuel to it. The emotion really is what's fueling it. So fear would be fueling, you know, certainty, the need for certainty, being afraid of things that we're out of control of. You know, significance would be anger, you know, very much. You know, love and connection from a negative way would be hurt, you know, maybe sadness, things like that. So we can suspend ourselves temporarily out of a crazy 8. Alcohol, drugs, workaholic, extreme sport, anything that distracts us from what's going on underneath. But again, it's temporary, because as soon as we go back into that context or whatever it is, and that this pattern starts running again, we're back into it again. And people kind of go, so pattern identification is really powerful. Notice where do you see a pattern occurring in your life, because that pattern will only keep occurring as long as the issues underneath it that are driving it have not been resolved. The next two needs are the needs of the spirit. And this is really an amazing opportunity we've got now to actually go into those and make them the priority. So that number 5 is growth, and number 6 is contribution. So we are, from the NLP world, we know that the unconscious mind is programmed to seek more and more. So as soon as we know something and we understand it, we go, okay, what's next? Right, I know that. Okay, what else? And we are actually predisposed to growth. We want to grow, you know, but again, we get a little bit stuck in the comfort zone. So if certainty was higher than growth, we would want to stay in the comfort zone. And we have all been thrown out of the comfort zone massively. So whether you wanted to be in it or not, the kind of that choice is really gone. And so growth is about how we can really test our mental, emotional, psychological muscles. How can we, and again, thank God for neuroplasticity. It means everything is changeable. Nothing is fixed. And if we make a decision to grow and we start searching and looking for how can we actually develop and evolve, we'll find it. We'll start, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive, you know, that old adage, but we have to be ready and we have to be willing to do that. And then contribution is we are not alone. Have you frozen?
Listening.
Okay, so contribution is to and I think this virus has really shown that no matter who you are, where you're from, what you do, what your position in life is, whatever it is, we're all the same. We are all human. And how can we, and I think the wave of contribution from people around the world has been incredible.
That's a real insight.
Oh.
So I can't help but mention it. Yeah, technology was stopped. Too many people on Zoom. So whilst this is all fascinating, the 6 human needs. How can people use this, and what can you do to enable people to live and enrich their lives?
Well, I think the number one thing is to ask yourself, how can you help and how can you contribute to other people, and what can you do? And that will immediately start. When you start thinking like that, you start stopping the sort of rumination in yourself about yourself. You know, you're going out into the world and thinking. And obviously, number one is to stay home if you do not need to go out. You know, that is a contribution. And a lot of people think, oh, I wish I could be doing more. And it's like, well, actually, by staying home, you are contributing to, you know, flattening this curve and not overloading the health services and those amazing people on the front line. And just anything, any help you can genuinely give in some way, or gift in some way, shape or form, I think will start to take you to that contribution. And just to start to really look at how you can grow your own emotional and mental muscles at this time. How can you really start to look at what's coming up? Don't be afraid of it, you know, embrace it, see it as an opportunity for growth, rather than, I mean, I personally felt like I fell off a cliff when this all started. And I gave myself 2 days to be miserable, and then I got bored because I don't like being miserable. It's just exhausting and it's not much fun for everyone else around me. But I went, okay, look, I am feeling like this. An emotion is okay. It's not going to overwhelm me. If I let it, I'll just keep going around. It'll keep obviously coming up. But the reality is, actually, we can all grow as people, and evolve and become a better version of ourselves at this time. This is an opportunity for that. And yeah, absolutely. If people, you know, want to talk to me directly, you know, this is what I do. I help people to become aware of themselves. What is it they'd like to change to make their lives better? And I just love seeing that, because it means I don't have to be an expert on anything. I just have to be an expert guide and help people to navigate.
You just have to ask the expert questions.
I just like yeah. So
okay.
yeah,
Cool.
I think just becoming aware of this alone can be quite insightful for people, and help them to understand their own behaviour and what they can do differently. So
Sara, as we wrap up and you post this, your details will be at the bottom of the video, so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, absolutely. They can give me a call, they can send me an email, and we can have a discussion and see how I can help them. So can I thank you for being part of your interview today? Well, thank you, Ian. Thank you for suggesting that you interview me. It's been fun, and I love talking to like-minded people, and as I said, learning something new every day for me is one of my goals.
Well, I think with the uncertainty of Zoom at the moment at this time, around about 10:30, we've done really well to get through it. So
we have. I think it got totally overloaded. Everybody was going online for their meetings.
Okay, so I'll bid you farewell. Have a great day, and I'll touch base with you hopefully next week.
Absolutely, Ian. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you so much.
Take care, Sarah. Bye.